On today's episode, we have a couple of Christmas movies that I affectionately refer to as the ones my sister likes. We have Love Actually from 2003 and The Holiday from 2006. Right, everyone, welcome to Brandon at Random Reviews. I am your host, Brandon Griffiths. Thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. As I mentioned, we've got some Christmas movies, set at Christmas movies that I want to discuss, but I've got a couple of guests on here to discuss them with me, starting with my sister, Michelle Hess. How are you doing, Michelle?
Oh, just perfect.
Awesome. And then I have my brother-in-law, her husband, Dan Hess. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm here.
You're here. All right. That's what I like to hear. So, obviously we all have our little Christmas rituals, especially when it comes to movies. And it's just, we've got ones that we watch every single year. And it's just, you just don't, I don't know. I never have a year that I never watch Christmas movies. I always watch at least a few of them. What are some of the movies that you guys, other than these two, obviously, that you guys like to check out every year?
Well, we disagree on watching these two because Dan, as you'll learn, does not love Love Actually. I claim I haven't watched it in the last couple of years, and he begs to differ immensely, but I do watch The Holiday every year.
Michelle, it does seem like you would watch Love Actually every year. Let's be honest.
It seems like she would because she does.
Because you don't love it, I haven't watched it every year.
Other one I knows of.
Right.
Anyway, go on.
Home Alone, I think we watch every year.
Home Alone holds up. We watch that every year, definitely.
You know what one... It's one that I have been adamantly trying not to watch every year is Christmas Vacation because I'm so fucking sick of that movie. I love it. It's hilarious, but it's like, holy shit, I've had about enough of it, So
yep, I know the feeling. I got there with A Christmas Story several years ago. I just got tired of it, and by several, I mean probably 20.
Yeah, in our house growing up, Brandon and I we didn't watch that because my mom didn't really like it, so we didn't watch that as often. It was Christmas Vacation for us that we watched every year.
And to be fair, even with our mom not liking it, when I finally actually watched it, I'm not a fan of A Christmas Story. On a very basic level, I can't even do like I do with Love Actually and just put it on in the background while I'm wrapping presents or something. I actively hate A Christmas Story. It is so fucking bad. I don't know what it is. The narrator, the whole thing. I don't like the story at all, and it just annoys the shit out of me.
We've watched Elf the last couple of years.
Yeah, Elf's pretty solid. It's one that I can see not doing every single year.
Yeah,
but
yeah, it might drop out of rotation this year because we've seen it the last couple of years.
I always watch Mickey's Christmas Carol, which is literally the reason I got Disney Plus, was to be able to watch that.
Obviously, another one I watch every year that I absolutely love is It's a Wonderful Life, which is another one of these movies. That's what I'm really curious about is what do you guys think makes a Christmas movie? Because is it just being set at Christmas that's enough? Because it seems like it is to me.
So, it's tough to say set at Christmas because I guess that's how Die Hard is allegedly a Christmas movie, right? It's like during a Christmas party, I suppose. But sometimes I guess if it just comes out at Christmas, I've been told, movies like The Wizard of Oz or the Lord of the Rings trilogy are considered by some to be Christmas movies because of when they were released or when you see them on TV every year. And then there's other Christmas movies, like one we watched a couple years ago when we started doing the annual Let's Watch a Terrible Movie Together. I don't even remember what it was called. Christmas in California, maybe something like that.
Oh, that was
there wasn't even a reference to Christmas in the entire movie.
But the title,
other than the title,
right? They do say it makes big bank to put Christmas, make a movie a Christmas movie of some sort, but like I guess what I'm curious is like what is, not a set at Christmas movie that's actually truly a Christmas movie, like A Christmas Carol. But even that you could probably argue it's just around Christmas time. That story doesn't have to be at Christmas.
The story itself doesn't have to be, but it is, right? They go through Christmas past, Christmas present, Christmas future, all that stuff. So it's pretty heavily weighted towards Christmas.
But it's got the word Christmas in there. But if you just call them the ghost of past, ghost of present, ghost of future, like it would.
I think you could argue that about any Christmas movie,
right? That's what I'm saying. That's why it results in so much debate between people about what is and is not a Christmas movie. I think it's because.
So you're talking more of like what themes does it need? Like, does it need family? Right. Does it need
Does it? This is Home Alone. Is that? That's set at Christmas, but there's very little to do with Christmas in it.
That's true. They could have just gone
all
on
in
vacation.
red and green, though. So obviously,
there we go.
That is true. That is true.
Yep, that's accurate. Of course. So yeah, those are some of them. Did you guys have any other ones that you could think of that are like standouts that you always watch?
There's probably others that I'm not thinking of right now.
But and it was like in 2020, I think we watched like 40 because it was the pandemic and we, were at home all the time. So, but yeah, there's only a handful, I think, that we actually watch every year.
Right. I have like I think a list of like 40 of them that I'll watch a dozen or two of them that, they're the ones I always watch, but it's like, I also don't actively pay attention to them fully all the time, so it's a little different. And obviously I watch Batman Returns because that's a Christmas movie through and through, and it is what it is.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, if you guys are ready, I would love to start talking about Love Actually, because I have a lot of shit to say about Love Actually.
Who doesn't?
Okay. So, Love Actually was released on November 14th, 2003, written and directed by Richard Curtis. He has written and directed Four Weddings and a Funeral, Notting Hill, Bridget Jones's Diary, The Boat That Rocked, aka Pirate Radio, which is a solid one, and About Time, which was previously covered on this podcast. For the producers, we have a handful of producers, nobody that's really of any note. And then for the score, we have composer Craig Armstrong, who did Fever Pitch, Must Love Dogs, The Incredible Hulk, In Time, The Great Gatsby from 2013, and Snowden. And then for our cast, we have Hugh Grant, who plays David, the Prime Minister. And he was in Four Weddings and a Funeral, Sense and Sensibility, 9 Months, Mickey Blue Eyes, Notting Hill, and About a Boy, among others. Alan Rickman plays Harry, and he was in Die Hard as Hans Gruber, and he was in the Harry Potter movies as Severus Snape. Then we have Emma Thompson, who plays Karen, and she was in Junior, where Arnold Schwarzenegger becomes pregnant, and she is with him. I believe she's his significant other. She was in Stranger Than Fiction, Sense and Sensibility, and she was in the Harry Potter movies as Professor Trelawney. Then we have Keira Knightley, who I have noted here is hot, and she plays Juliet. She was in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, Pirates of the Caribbean, Domino, and Atonement, which is a super depressing fucking movie. Laura Linney plays Sarah. Colin Firth plays Jamie. Liam Neeson plays Daniel, and he was in Batman Begins and Star Wars Episode 1. Bill Nighy plays Billy Mack, and Andrew Lincoln plays Mark, and he was in The Walking Dead, which I've never seen a full episode of.
You're not missing much. Overrated.
Oh, okay. I'm relieved
After
to hear
season
that.
1, it became
really
awful,
falls apart. Okay.
in my opinion.
So then we have Martine McCutcheon, who I also have noted here is hot, and she plays Natalie. Martin Freeman plays John. Billy Bob Thornton plays the U.S. president. As you can see, there's quite a large cast here. I'll try and be quick. Alicia Cuthbert plays Carol Ann. Shannon Elizabeth plays Harriet. January Jones plays Jeannie, and Claudia Schiffer plays Carol. Casting notes. When casting the part of Sarah, writer and director Richard Curtis auditioned a great many British girls, but kept saying, I want someone like Laura Linney. The casting director eventually snapped and said, oh, for fuck's sake, get Laura Linney then. And Linney auditioned for the part and got it. The plot synopsis, this is a very high level one because there's so many fucking plot threads in this movie. During the holiday season, we get a glimpse into the various love lives of several people from all different backgrounds. All right, are we ready for this fucking plot? I mean,
okay.
certainly.
One thing I have to note is that I've seen this movie 50 times. I only know half the
50?
character. Okay, whatever. But I only know half the characters' names.
I don't know a single
Yeah,
character's
I just
name.
refer to I refer to all of my notes are referring to actor names only, so that'll be helpful if that's how you guys are going.
All my notes, it's nothing but actor names with a couple of exceptions. Jojen Reed is one exception. Wisconsin guy is another exception. Actually, I think those might be the only two. Everybody else is just their real name.
I noted Bilbo Baggins as Martin Freeman because I can never remember his name. And then the ones that I like actually call by their characters' names are Jamie, which is Colin Firth, Sarah, Laura Linney, and Natalie and David.
Speaking of Laura Linney, her beau is Xerxes.
Yes. I was gonna mention that too. I can't fucking believe it's actually that guy because they make him out to be like this mammoth looking dude
like
in that
10
movie.
foot tall, huge dude. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I got a lot of thoughts about this movie that I really fucking need to get out there. It's really wearing on me.
Let me start though with a general question. Is this story actually about love? Actually?
I would personally say no, not really. I mean,
I agree, and I actually
a couple of the story, like the Hugh Grant and the Colin Firth storylines, maybe, but they're also like super lusty, like they don't know each other, they're not in love.
It's a very...
Right. I wrote down each of the main character storylines, and next to it I wrote yes or no, whether I thought that it was actually about love, and only about half of them. Some of them I have yeses, but like in different ways. Like Bill Nye, I said yes because he slowly realizes that there's like a fraternal love with his manager that he keeps giving a hard time.
Right.
And I think the Alan Rickman, Emma Thompson story is about like their love kind of falling apart. But then there's other ones like Colin Firth, I think is a guy on a rebound. I don't think it's about love at all.
He's proposing to this fucking girl that it's like they haven't even spoken full sentences to each other at any point leading up to the proposal. Yeah,
there's no way that marriage lasts more than like 30 days, right?
Right. I'm with you there, Dan. I absolutely understand what you're
the
what
Laura
you're saying.
Linney story, I'm not even sure what that's about other than a super fucking depressing few scenes where you just like feel so bad for her. I don't know. There's like nothing redeeming about her story. It's so sad, and I love Laura Linney.
Right, and it's like you're like, oh, okay, we've got a little something here. She's into this guy at work. Okay, all right, she's gonna go for Xerxes. You know, that'd be cool. And then it's like it fucking blows up, and then it's like there's no resolution to her story. It's basically just, yep, she's got to deal with this now, and she's not going to be able to be with Carl or whatever his real name is, and I don't really understand it.
Okay, so what was it else that you needed to get off your chest? Sorry, I interjected there.
So there are so many, like, okay, I got to talk. I mean, I know I'm jumping ahead here. I was thinking we'd go through the plot a little more linearly, but, just the whole Andrew Lincoln storyline. What in the actual fuck is this? Like, okay,
Dan
so
bitches about this every fucking time we watch it. Like this is why he does not like this movie. Is the Andrew Lincoln
really is? It's so creepy and like there's nothing charming about what he does.
Not at all.
Creepy and like I feel bad for his best friend who has 2 lines in the whole movie who thinks his best friend is his best friend, but in reality he's like trying to steal his wife.
Right, exactly.
It's terrible. It's so not
like,
charming.
It's also even creepier when you realize that Keira Knightley is 18 in this movie.
And I know you had a note that she was that she was hot, but I think her mouth looks really weird in this movie. It
does look a little odd. I'll give you
like
that.
the way that she holds her face and like contorts it in every scene. It's just fucking weird.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
she was very young in this movie too.
I mean, but that's the thing. It's like, okay, so I guess we can really, I mean, that's the one I wanted to talk about most. So it's like, they have this fucking wedding, Keira Knightley and whatever her husband's name is, I don't remember.
Token black guy.
Well, one of two, I think. And so they fucking set up this thing at this wedding where they, like, Andrew Lincoln organizes to have a choir sing All You Need Is Love by the Beatles to them as they're like closing out the ceremony. And I hate everything that this scene chooses to be. I hate so much of it. Like, I watch them and it's like all of their reactions to the song starting are way too animated. Yeah. And then, it's like they're singing and I hate I don't like the way they're singing, and I don't like the little fucking instrumentation that like pops up out of nowhere, like a fucking trumpet just pops out of the crowd, and they're like, oh my goodness, how hilarious,
Do you want me to just go upstairs so you and Dan can just bitch about this movie for the next hour?
Michelle, you've got to chime in.
I love that part. Like, I understand. I agree with your part. Like, they're acting with the reactions and they're, over the top sort of stuff is annoying. But like, I thought it was a cool idea. And it's
a cool idea that's very poorly executed, in my opinion. Like, I don't think
it's a good way to open the movie, though. Right? Like,
right.
Because the whole thing is supposed to be about. Jesus Christ. But you don't know how. I think the thing is like, I remember watching it for the first time and thinking like, this is really cool. And Andrew Lincoln's such a good friend, not realizing what a creep he was, right? Okay, so we learned that later. And that, I think, is what's clouding both of your judgments about this wedding scene, is that what a dickhead Andrew Lincoln becomes.
See, I will contest that, because I remember the very first time I saw this movie and I had no idea what was coming around any corner with any of these people, especially creepy Andrew Lincoln. And I watched this scene and I was like, good God, what the ever-loving fuck is this? Like, what are we watching? Like, is this whole movie going to be this over the top and stupid? Because if it is, I'm not going to like it.
Well, Michelle, didn't you say that you read something somewhere where Andrew Lincoln even said in real life that he thought this character was super creepy?
Yeah.
And didn't understand it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's in my trivia at the end. He's saying he wished it would have been rewritten, and he said it felt really stalkerish and creepy and all that fun stuff.
I'm convinced that the guy who wrote and directed this movie didn't have an editor or edited it himself, because I feel like there's so many of these little things that a halfway decent editor would have been like, this doesn't really make sense, and you should tweak this. Do you think his story is about love? I put no, it's bullshit and creepy.
It's fucking terrifying, honestly. Like, it could be one of those ones that they like resplice into like a trailer for a horror movie, and just make it like, like that, like all these eerie sounds and stuff. But I
think you just found the next what's that YouTube channel? The Real Trailers or whatever.
Oh, Honest Trailers, yeah.
Honest Trailers. I love that one. Yeah, somebody should do an honest trailer of what you just described.
A sequel to The Watcher, that new show that's out that everybody's talking about.
Right.
Oh God. So, I mean, going from, okay, so then we get, because the hard part about this story is that they like try and make these people connected in some way. And so we see Laura Linney asking Andrew Lincoln if he's in love with Keira Knightley, and
no, she's asking if he's in love with the husband,
his friend,
his best friend.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
That's what's happening?
Are you in love with him?
Yeah.
She said,
God.
Just wondered if you needed somebody to talk to.
This is what I'm saying. Have you ever watched this goddamn movie?
I've watched this movie through several times and I never picked up on that being, like, I swear she was asking if she, like, I assumed because it makes more sense to me that she would be asking about Keira Knightley. So maybe I just like retroactively filled in the blanks when I figured it out. You were just
seething at that part.
Yeah.
By then.
Yeah, I really was. But noticed. So nothing comes of that, obviously, because he's not in love with the guy, right? So it's like, he's trying to conceal his love for her.
In fact, there aren't any gay relationships in this, are there?
Well, if you don't count Bill Nighy and his manager.
That comes off as more fraternal or platonic to me. Like I think I'm going to cancel this movie.
It's not woke.
Not hashtag woke.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
That's how I'm going to get out of watching it every year. I'm going to complain that it's not woke.
Okay, so yes, they're trying to link these people together, but it doesn't really matter for the most part.
No, not at all.
And it's fine. The only one I think that's not connected at all is Bill Nighy's story, but that the way that they do that is that he's always on TV in the background.
Right. They're constantly showing him, and
so should we go through like just those few main stories and tell the?
Well, so since can we get some closure on Andrew Lincoln first? Because I really want to get that.
What's the closure you need?
Yeah, I think we all agree that it's awful.
Okay, it's awful, but so she comes to his house and she wants to like extend an olive branch to him because he's been really cold toward her and she wants to start anew. And
no, she's coming to find the video. That's what
but she says that to begin with. Like, she basically says to him, like, hey, it's always kind of seemed like, you haven't really liked me. And, I'd like to change that. Like, she says that. I know that. Have you watched this movie, Michelle? Have you seen this before? So she says that to him, and so like he's trying to like she wants to see the wedding video, and so she finds it and puts it on, and it's all this super fucking creep show of close-ups,
super close-ups,
and it's like I gotta say that this is some professional ass camera work that they were doing with this wedding camcorder, because I mean it looks like a lot of it is shot by a fucking movie camera, surprisingly enough, But I mean, like, she basically figures out through that way that he's infatuated with her. And then he goes to her, I won't dwell too long, but like he goes to the house when her and her husband are home and pretends to be carolers by using like a boombox playing Silent Night. And he shows her these cue cards telling her how much he's in love with her. And it's like, the way she reacts to it, there would be like such horror on her face. Like, it would be terrifying to her. And then it's like she goes and kisses him, I think, and like
she runs down the street and kisses him while her husband is watching TV inside.
And that's it for his story, right? I mean, we don't get anything else really of any substance.
And the tone is definitely one of like, we should be smitten by what's happening.
Right,
instead
it's
of
like
horrified.
Romantic. It's so
it's
touching.
horrifying.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Okay, so anyway, we can move on from Andrew Lincoln. I just really needed to get that off my chest for him.
So let's bounce the other way and ask Michelle. So which one of the ones that is really good? Because I think even you agree that one's creepy.
Yes, I agree that one's creepy. Hugh Grant and Martine, whatever her last name is, David and Natalie is my favorite story, I think.
I would agree with that. I think that's. I think their story is a good one.
She is. He's the new prime minister, and she is working for him as the prime minister. He's starting to recognize that he's kind of got a crush on her, and there's something that happens when the U.S. president, played by Billy Bob Thornton, comes, and Billy Bob Thornton's character hits on Natalie, and Hugh Grant recognizes like, hey, this is not good. Like, I shouldn't be infatuated or, have a crush on one of my employees. So he asks her to be moved to another department. And then eventually he gets a Christmas card from her, realizes that what he saw with her and the president was misunderstood. And so he goes to find her, which is probably one of the best scenes in the movie, where he's knocking on every door. Yeah. And the little kids answer and they ask if they're carolers, and his driver starts singing in a very rich baritone, and it's
that's pretty cool. That is very funny. Yeah. I like
and
that
then he finds her eventually. They're on their way to the school play, and kind of main ending of the movie in general, and I mean not the final scene, but is them kissing in the back of the stage of so that's a very quick synopsis of their story, but like it's actually like they have feelings for each other that are growing over, a period of time, and they're not like committing themselves to lifelong whatever. They just like each other and start quote unquote dating by the end of that period.
I have that noted that, in my trivia that there was, like Richard Curtis, when he was writing these stories, he wrote the Hugh Grant story and the Colin Firth story as two separate stories to become movies. And then he ended up combining them and condensing them down to fit into this movie with like 35 other storylines going on in it.
That's interesting because one of the things I had written down, I didn't know that, but one of the things that I had written down was, I think for as many little stories as there are in this movie, they should have completely cut out about 4 of them.
Oh, absolutely.
Use that time to expand on ones that were good, like the Hugh Grant one and the Colin Firth one, which, I don't dislike that one, but I don't, as I mentioned before, I see that more of like he's on a rebound with this girl and there's not enough there to convince me that they're in love.
Right. And
you know what I mean?
I got to ask, what is this is going to sound inappropriate, but who is she supposed to be? Is she like his cleaning lady or like what's she doing?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. But I mean, it's like, I really struggle with that one because it's like, what is the reason that they like part ways and like she goes back home? Is it because he's going to be going home or something and he doesn't need her anymore?
So like he's only there for a few weeks.
He's like on a writer's retreat or something / get out of the house because his girlfriend is cheating on him.
Because that's what I love about Colin Firth is like they really fucking hammer it home. Like he keeps telling his wife how much he loves her and he just repeats himself over and over again. And it's like, oh, hey, I wonder what's going to happen with this. I wonder if maybe something bad's going to happen that,
we've established there's a lot of horror movie themes in this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I like the Colin Firth storyline. I think you're right in that it doesn't have enough time to really like solidify that. And I think it should have been, they can't speak the same language. So they're, the dialogue in the subtitles is hysterical because they're saying similar things to each other back and forth, which is funny. But I don't know how you could have affection for someone if you literally cannot communicate with them.
Yeah.
And then like, I feel like, the end of the movie is him going back to Portugal where she's from, I think, and finding her to propose to her. And they've both learned the other's language a little bit, but I think it shouldn't have been, will you marry me? It should have been like, hey, I want to get to know you.
Yeah. Let's go on a date.
Let's go on a date. This does not need to be a proposal at all.
Yeah. That one, I would have liked to have seen those two storylines expanded at the expense of cutting.
Wisconsin guy can be cut 100%.
Wisconsin guy could be cut, even though it was kind of funny. It could have been cut. I think the Laura Linney one could have been cut, even though it kills me because I love Laura Linney. I think Alan Rickman's could have been cut, which kills me because I love Alan Rickman. But to be fair, I think Alan Rickman and Laura Linney are wasted in this movie.
They are. And I mean, Alan Rickman gets a horrible fucking storyline. And it's like him and Emma Thompson. It's like, he's got this very promiscuous coworker, like assistant that.
Yes, my note refers to her as dirty whore.
There you go.
And she's not even that good looking. Like, I don't get it.
She's not like, she's not particularly great looking. And she has that moment where she's talking to him and she like spreads her legs to him. And it's like, what are we doing here? Like, what is going on in this fucking plot line? Because it's like, he's like entertaining the idea of cheating on Emma Thompson with this woman who is very open about how much she wants to fuck him. And it's like, what am I supposed to latch onto in this? Like, I mean, the whole resolution to that whole storyline
there is no resolution.
There's nothing because it's like Emma Thompson is with him at the store and he goes and buys the other girl jewelry. And it's like, what a fucking class act move, to fucking buy jewelry for another woman while you're with your wife at the store. Anyway, not that it excuses anything anyway.
Also very ugly jewelry, so there's that.
Yeah, that's a problem. But it's like, by the end of it, it's like, Emma Thompson at one point thinks that the jewelry is for her, and then she opens her gift and it's a CD for Joni Mitchell. And it's like, they basically just, she confronts him about it after the play, and she's like, what would you do if you were in my shoes? I don't know if it was just jewelry or jewelry and sex or jewelry in a relationship or whatever, but it's like she's pissed about it, but then it's like the end of that storyline is just that she's fine.
So at the airport, so the final wrap, like the movie starts in the airport and ends in the airport.
Yeah, right.
So he comes back from presumably a business trip, and I think you're kind of led to believe that either like they haven't worked it out yet or they're separated or something, because like, you know, he just kisses her on the cheek and like she doesn't respond well. So it's like they're kind of leading you to believe that like this hasn't been figured out. Like there's some issues with their marriage.
Sequel coming 2024.
They've already done a sequel to this movie, by the way.
They're going to have to find somebody to replace Alan Rickman, though.
That's true.
But
no one can replace Alan Rickman.
No. We're going to learn that he left.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the basic premise of, you know, like, I'm trying to think of, like, what's the next best story to really discuss.
So,
because
I like the Bill Nighy one. I think that might be the only one that they hit perfectly balanced of, like,
yes,
that you see what you need to see. It's just kind of a funny comic cutaway.
Right.
Every
like a little
few
sideshow.
scenes.
Yeah.
It's always kind of in the background. Though I do have the question, is competing for the #1 Christmas hit each year a thing in the UK? Like, is that a thing?
I don't know.
Because this is the only time I've ever seen.
I've never heard that talked about at all.
Yeah, it keeps coming up in the movie, and like interviewers are asking, like, "Oh, it's between you and that boy band or whatever," and it's like this competition. And I like, is that a thing? I mean, it's not
no
here,
idea.
but
I don't think so. I think it was just invented for this movie. But I mean.
Billy Mack also has some of the best lines.
He does have a lot of good lines.
So when he's talking about Blue, the other band that he's competing against, and he's on the TV show, and he writes on the poster of them, "We've got little pricks." And the hosts are like, "Hey, kids are watching." And he said, "Oh, okay, I've got a message for you, kids. Don't buy drugs. Become a pop star, and they'll give them to you for free."
I love the deliberate travesty that is his cover of "Love Is All Around" by the Trogs. Like, I mean, it's just, did they just shoehorn the word Christmas and snow into the song
and he
make
makes
it
fun
a
of it
Christmas song?
himself.
Oh yeah,
So
he
bad.
actively hates it, and but I love that they picked Bill Nighy, who couldn't sing to save his life, and he doesn't even have like aging rock star levels of vocal abilities, and it makes it that much funnier when he's like singing this terrible song. It's fucking, I mean, like, I will say his is one of, if not my favorite portion of this movie. It's very solid.
The only other one I think we haven't really talked about, well, there's a couple of them, but there's the Jojen Reed one, which I really like.
Wait,
Yeah.
for those listeners who don't know, Jojen Reed was a character in Game of Thrones, and Jojen Reed, the character, is played by Thomas. Do you remember his name? Anybody?
Jojen Reed.
That's the problem. And he played little boy Sam, who is Liam Neeson's stepson, who is in love with somebody. So
like,
Thomas Brody Sangster is his name in real life.
There you go. So Jojen Reed falls in love with a girl in school, and in the span of about 3 to 4 weeks, he not only learns how to play the drums, but somehow weasels his way into the school play performance thing as like the drummer of the band, which I have to assume he like poisoned the original drummer so they would drop out and got the job like the night before.
Right.
Because he would have had like no time to practice with them because he was spending all that time learning in his bedroom how to play the drums. But despite that little strangeness there, I found that story very, very heartwarming. Oh, and also it's strange that when he's feeling bad, Liam Neeson makes him watch Titanic, and like, why would you make a 10-year-old watch Titanic, and then
imitate it with him, like imitate the fucking front of the ship scene with him as a dad and stepson? What? I don't get it.
Well, and then the whole thing is like, it's weird because Liam Neeson and his wife, Sam's mom, has died at the beginning of the movie, and it's the funeral, and Liam Neeson thinks that Sam's really upset by his mom's death, but while he is actually in love with this girl at school, and that's what he's all bent out of shape about.
Well, I mean, he doesn't. I gotta say, Liam Neeson's arc in this movie is just a laugh riot. I mean, from going to his wife's funeral to crying over his wife and being told by Emma Thompson that nobody's gonna want to fuck him if he keeps acting like that. I mean, it's like, what more can we ask for from a love
Then he
story?
meets Claudia Schiffer at the end, and
honestly, like, that's the hardest thing for me is, like, I know the name Claudia Schiffer, but as he kept referencing her, I was like, I don't even have a face for that name. Like, I can't even think of what she looks like. So I didn't even realize until after the fact that it was her.
Yeah, keep in mind, this was 20 years ago, and I think she was a pretty big deal still at the time.
Well, and I think it was also like she was a huge model in the 80s and 90s, probably at a time when you were not really thinking about supermodels.
Right. Yeah, that's fair.
It was definitely a Liam Neeson's demographic reference, I think.
Yeah,
most definitely.
Martin Freeman, who I call Bilbo Baggins, and like they're doing the stand-ins for porn shots, and
this are you okay? What
it's weird.
What is this? I mean, like, there is. I don't believe, and I don't know for sure, I don't believe that any porno in the history of pornos has had stand-ins or had this high of a budget ever. Like, I've seen Boogie Nights. I know how it was in the 70s. Like, come on. Like, I don't fucking get it.
I think this would have been better as like a Saturday Night Live sketch or something.
Right.
Like, because it's just such an absurd premise.
Well, and then apparently, like, when they show this on TV and stuff, they just get rid of that storyline completely, which makes sense. But I mean, it's kind of cute, right? Like, and it's, you know, it's one of the very small storylines that comes in, and it's just a few seconds, and then like they, you know, start to like each other and go out on a date.
The best part though is that they need to get all, you know, they're doing it so that they can get all the lighting just right. But apparently they have to be making all the motions at the same time as well.
Right. And be naked.
Right. Be naked to get the lighting perfect on the nipples and everything, and then be doing the motions.
And I mean, I will admit it's a little funny, like the way that they're doing, you know, whatever sex acts that they're supposed to be, you know, pantomiming or whatever you want to say. And like, they're like, it's funny that they're talking, they're like doing like regular, like water cooler talk, like, oh, you know, traffic was gridlocked, blah, blah, blah. You know, like they're just talking about it and nobody really, you know, it's like, it's not really, it's normal for them to just be, you know, him grabbing her boobs and, you know, whatever. So it's like, I found it pretty funny.
Yeah, it was a little bit of comic relief to some of the more serious.
Yeah, every time you see Laura Linney and you want to kill yourself, they've got to cut to either Bill Nye or Martin Freeman to make you laugh again.
So let's talk a little bit about Laura Linney then. So you find out she's in love with Carl, one of her office mates,
AKA Xerxes.
has been since she started. Yes, and Dan says that every goddamn time we watch this movie. I've never seen 300, or I don't remember it, so I wouldn't know that.
That is not a Michelle movie at all.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So anyway, you find out then she has a brother who has some issues and calls her all the time and stuff, which I find really interesting that her brother would be allowed to call her all the time, but you know, whatever. She finally goes to hook up with Carl and her brother calls and she says, no, I'm not busy. And she, you know, ends up leaving to go take care of her brother rather than, you know, start this relationship with Carl. And then it kind of ends with like them, Carl and Laura Linney, saying goodnight to each other later on. And you know that like nothing's going to happen with them. But yes, this is a super sad one, but it's more about familial love than it is about, well, I mean, she loves Carl, but like she has to balance.
Well, she's got a crush on Carl.
Yeah.
And I mean,
call it love, actually.
To your... You were just waiting to fucking drop that line, you son of a bitch. All right, so
that's the second time I've said it.
Probably, but it was the first time was a pass. You get a free pass anyway. So like, yeah, the whole thing with the brother calling her, like he would be able to call her in that psych ward, I think, but he would not be able to call her that late. Like they would not let her call that late.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, it's kind of, I don't know. I mean, but that whole thing, it's like that entire arc has nothing, like, there's nothing in it for me. Like, I'm like, what am I watching this? Why is this in a movie? Yeah. You know?
I don't think it fits.
No.
But I think it does because I think it's about love, actually. and different
Between
types of
her and her
love.
brother?
And that like she's trying to balance. I don't know if you remember, but my brother was in the hospital for a while, and I was gone for a month or more, and that was hard on you, Dan, and like our relationship and stuff like that. Like I feel like that with this, that like you have this romantic relationship and you have this family relationship, and you're trying to balance both. For her, she learned she can't, right? Like she's got so much invested in the brother, whereas Brandon, with you got better, you got out of the hospital, got back on your feet and all of that sort of stuff, and Dan got over it.
Did you start calling him darling?
No, I did not call him dear or darling.
My darling.
My
so
darling.
Very weird.
It's very unusual.
But also, Brandon didn't ask if we could get the Pope on the phone at 2:00 in the morning. So
that would have been pretty funny, though, if he did call.
Yeah.
Can we call the Pope?
That would have been. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I would have asked for the Pope at certain points based on what I'm being told I was saying while I was in the hospital. But yeah, I mean, the one thing I do want to make mention of, I know we basically talked about all the major storylines, and the one thing I do like is the actual, and I know it's just because I'm a sucker for the song, but it's the play where they actually do the performance.
Oh yeah.
Where she sings All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey, and she's a really fucking good singer. And
yeah, I even looked up to see, like, did anything happen with that girl? Like, did she become a performer or anything? I think
she's just like a voice actress on like animated shows and stuff.
She is like a really good singer in that.
Yeah, and like 10 years old.
Yeah.
And Jojen Reed looks like an infant sitting on those fucking drums. Like,
this is the other
ridiculous.
thing is Jojen Reed and Keira Knightley are only 5 years different in age in this movie in real life.
Yeah.
And so that's why the Andrew Lincoln, Keira Knightley thing is even creepier, because Jojen Reed's 13 and Keira Knightley's 18, and it's freaking weird.
Yeah. Also, while we're talking about that performance, Jojen Reed gets the award for the best look in the whole movie when she points at him and says, "All I want for Christmas is you," and he's like happy, and then she turns to the audience and says, "And you, and you, and you." That like scowl on his face for a split second is priceless.
Yes.
Did you know that he was actually? You said, he was 13 when this movie. Yeah, okay. So I had it written down that I estimated he was 47 years old based on what I've always heard about him.
So do we have a whole lot more to say about that? I mean, we pretty much beat that one to death.
I think we're good. We're pretty far into recording anyway. So I mean, my only my praise for the movie would be Martine McCutcheon and Bill Nighy. I like both of their stories a lot. And then what I don't like about the movie is that there are too many shitty stories and not enough good ones to hold the entire movie.
I agree. The balance was lost.
What's the counterpoint, Michelle?
I like it.
Okay, here you go.
I like the balance, so there.
Okay, so I got a little bit of trivia. Curtis's original concept for the film included 14 different scenarios or stories, but 4 of them were cut, with 2 of them having been filmed. Then in 2017, Richard Curtis wrote a script for Red Nose Day, which reunited a dozen characters and picked up their storylines 14 years later. Filming began in February of 2017, and the short film was broadcast on BBC One on March 24th, 2017. Apparently, they had to put Dame Emma Thompson into a fat suit to make her appear heavier because she is actually very thin, which is
and she did not look fat.
No, she really didn't. But it's like, it's not like they did anything to her. Yeah, I don't, my God. I mean, like I guess her face is really thin through. So it's like, if you're not paying attention to her body, then, but it's like, how much of a fat suit? Yeah, for sure. But so that, I will read the portion that about Andrew Lincoln. Andrew Lincoln was initially unsure about his character, as he thought the scene with handwritten signs was borderline stalker territory. He has also said that his character's behavior is creepy and inappropriate, and he wished the writers would have rewritten him as more reasonable and normal with his feelings.
Yeah. Borderline is being kind.
Yeah, that's really generous.
There's nothing borderline about it.
Okay, so moving on to info and ratings for this one. Runtime 136 minutes, budget $40 million, opening weekend $6.9 million, worldwide gross $245.2 million, IMDb rating 7.6, which is shocking. And Rotten Tomato critics score 64%, Rotten Tomato audience score 72%. Personal rating, what do you guys think? What's your rating, Dan?
I go 2.5 stars because the good parts are good, but the bad parts for me really bring it down.
Okay. How about you, Michelle?
I'm at like a 4 out of 5.
Okay. I would give it a firm 2 out of 5 stars, and I will go no higher. Okay, so
all right, what's next?
Good
moving
Lord.
on to The Holiday, released on December 8th, 2006, written and directed by Nancy Meyers, and she wrote or directed Private Benjamin, Father of the Bride Part 1 and 2, the Steve Martin ones, The Parent Trap, the Lindsay Lohan one from 1998, What Women Want, Something's Gotta Give, and It's Complicated. For the producers, we had Nancy Meyers and Bruce A. Block. For the score, we had composer Hans Zimmer, who is a powerhouse composer. I was really shocked to see that he actually did the score for this. He worked on the Dark Knight trilogy, Rain Man, Twister, Days of Thunder, Backdraft, A League of Their Own, True Romance, The Lion King from 1994, The Rock, and Gladiator.
But I mean, it is about composing in this
It
movie,
is. I
so
mean, it would
seems
only make sense that it had like a really good composer. So, I mean, and then we got, for the cast, we have Kate Winslet, who plays Iris Simpkins. She was in Sense and Sensibility, Titanic, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is a personal favorite of mine. You should absolutely check it out if you get a chance. And she was in Revolutionary Road it was a reunion with Leonardo DiCaprio, and I've never seen it and don't know if it is worth checking out. Cameron Diaz plays Amanda Woods, and she was in The Mask, My Best Friend's Wedding, There's Something About Mary, Being John Malkovich, Charlie's Angels, and the Shrek movies as Princess Fiona. Jude Law plays Graham Simpkins. He was in Gattaca, The Talented Mr. Ripley, Road to Perdition, the Sherlock Holmes movies, The Grand Budapest Hotel, and Harry Potter, the Fantastic Beast movies, and I never could get into those ones. And Jack Black plays Miles Dumont, and we know him from High Fidelity, previously covered on this podcast, discussed with Dan. He was in Shallow Hal, School of Rock, Envy, Bernie, and the new Jumanji movies. Rufus Sewell plays Jasper, and he was in A Knight's Tale, Dark City, and The Illusionist. The only casting note I really have is that this film was written specifically with Cameron Diaz, Kate Winslet, Jude Law, and Jack Black in mind. And for the plot synopsis, two strangers, one in the US and one in the UK, are fed up with their respective love lives and arrange to trade houses with each other for a brief period during the Christmas season to get away. All right, guys. I mean, what do we got for this movie? I mean, how are we gonna tackle this, you think?
So I will start by saying I believe Cameron Diaz is a legitimately terrible actor.
Really?
I agree, and we talk about this every time we watch this movie.
She's
is
so
that
bad.
this is the movie that she does okay in, that I can handle, but most Cameron Diaz movies I can't watch her in because
I
it drives
find
me
her
crazy.
borderline unwatchable in this movie.
I'll admit she is definitely bad in a lot of stuff. I guess I wasn't noticing it coming through quite so bad in this one, like Michelle was saying, but
yeah.
I mean,
but that observation aside, compared to the last movie, I mean, similarity, you've got sort of a, more than one story going on. You've got two different stories happening in parallel, but unlike the other one, they didn't also cram 10 more in there. It's really the two stories,
right?
Which I find
it's a lot more
I
digestible.
find it allows both of them to develop and breathe. They are both of them, as your synopsis stated, they're kind of running away for similar reasons because they're fed up with their love lives and whatever, and trying to get away. But other than that, it's actually kind of two opposite stories, right? The Kate Winslet character, she gets to California and meets a bunch of friends and develops new relationships and kind of lets go. Whereas Cameron Diaz's character, does the opposite. She meets like one person and only one person and becomes really clingy and like kind of totally falls down a well of, falls in love with this guy, like almost right off the bat, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's Jude Law. You would too.
Yeah, I mean that's true. That's the only.
Well, you're saying Jack Black has to grow on you.
Yes.
So let me pose this question: who would you have recast in Cameron Diaz's role as Amanda Woods?
Literally anyone else. No, I'm just kidding.
That's a good question. I mean, maybe. What about Jack
Winona
Black's
Ryder,
girlfriend?
Michelle? Would you have gone with Winona Ryder?
All right, touche.
Yeah. You know what's funny is this is a neat little tidbit, but in all the episodes I've recorded, she is the one that was most considered for parts and then did not get the part. Like
I think there's a reason.
Frequently,
for that.
yeah. There's
I
definitely.
suspect they met her and they were like,
Ugh. I don't know. I mean, I think like Cameron Diaz has the look, and I don't think she does horribly in this movie, like I said. So I'd have to think about that a little bit. But I think the other characters, Jack Black, Jude Law, Kate Winslet, are perfectly cast. I mean, obviously, if it was written for them too, then that makes a big difference. But
Jennifer Aniston. That's my answer.
I don't know if I'm a fan of that. I mean,
I think
outside of Friends, I haven't really been.
I think she could have played a lot. L.A. Whatever.
Anyway, so this. Let me just get into a little bit of the background. So Iris, played by Kate Winslet, has been in love with this guy that she works with for years. They dated, but then they broke up because he was cheating on her with another coworker. At the beginning of the movie, you find out that they're still talking all the time, emailing, talking on the phone, even though he's with this other woman. And then you learn that he's engaged to this other woman, and Iris, Kate Winslet's character, kind of falls apart, and she's like, I got to do something different.
Oh.
On the other side, Cameron Diaz is dating Edward Burns, and, she makes trailers for movies, and the beginning of the movie, she's throwing Ed Burns out because she thinks he's been cheating on her. And you learn that he was, in fact, cheating on her, but she's also, married to her work, and they don't have a good relationship and whatever. And so she's trying to figure out what to do. And Iris and Amanda find each other online and decide to swap houses.
Right. And I want to have a little go back for Iris with the whole finding out Jasper was engaged. If there's any way possible that her boss knew that she had been with Jasper or had feelings for him, and then made it a point of like making her the center of attention to announce the engagement in front of the entire office party, it would just blow my fucking mind. Like it would be like the worst fucking thing you could possibly do to somebody.
But
you
also,
know what I mean?
like, they'd been broken up for years at this point.
Yeah, I think it kind of shows how, this is like a relationship in her head only.
Right.
With Jasper leading her along.
And she's also the person that writes all the wedding announcements. And that's why he calls on her, is he's like, oh, I've got an announcement for you.
Yeah. Okay,
a scoop, whatever. That's kind of how they get into that and why they call her out specifically. Dan and I both had notes about, because Iris leaves her job presumably in London at a newspaper where she, writes these wedding announcements.
It's definitely in London because you see her walking past Parliament as soon as she leaves the Christmas party.
She's super upset that Jasper, her ex, is engaged, and she's walking, gets on the train, gets home, walks to her house. And Dan's question on here is, how long is the walk from the train station to her snow globe house? And I looked it up and I said, commutes home, it's 1.5 hours by train from London to Surrey.
And then she presumably walks 1.5 miles through a cow pasture and down a lane.
Right. And it's only like 40 miles.
3-hour commute.
Yeah, it's only 40 miles outside of town, but I looked up like the train times, like if she was taking the train, that's not including the walking. So yeah, she's got a hell of a commute to live out in the middle of the country like that and work in London. And this is pre-working from home, remote work availability.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's some good homework, Michelle. I'm really appreciate you.
I had to look that up for my own awareness.
So is the best way to do this here then to to stick with the Kate Winslet story and then come back to the Cameron Diaz story?
That's what I was kind of
Yeah,
thinking.
we can do
Okay.
that. So we should probably introduce Miles, Jack Black's character, who is he's a film composer, and he is actually a friend of, I think it's his name's Ethan, Amanda's ex. He works with him, and so Miles runs into Iris when he comes to pick up some stuff for Ethan, and he's basically just he's got this girlfriend, and she's played by Shannon Sossamon, and I mean, I recognize her. She used to be in so many movies in the early aughts and the late 90s. Like, she was a leading lady type. Like, she was big time. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
she was
in a bunch of stuff.
She was in a bunch of stuff. Like, she wasn't necessarily always the lead, but like, she was in a few movies where she was like the lead actress.
Yeah. Like, what was it? 40 Days, 40 Nights. I think she was in that. She was in A Knight's Tale. Like
Rules of Attraction, and she was in. I mean, she was in a.
Yeah,
bunch
but it
of
was
stuff,
a very short-lived sort of thing. But yeah. I mean, like when I saw this movie the first time, like I recognized her from all of those other movies. And then also Iris befriends a neighbor of Amanda's. His name is Arthur Abbott. She learns is an old film writer from Hollywood.
From like the golden age.
Yeah, from like the golden age. He's worked in Hollywood for, 60, 70 years at this point. And, he gives her all these old movies to watch and all this sort of stuff. She holds a Hanukkah party with him and his friends that Jack Black ends up inadvertently crashing, and they get to know him a little bit better. And I don't know, like some organization wants to do an evening with Arthur Abbott, and he really doesn't want to do it because he doesn't think anybody's going to show up. Nobody's going to remember him. He didn't have that big of an impact. He's walking with a walker and doesn't want to have to walk out on a walker on stage. So Kate Winslet helps to start to get him walking on his own and goes and gets him a new suit. And all while this is happening, she's watching all of these movies, and she and Jack Black are, becoming better friends. And
I do love the whole thing with Arthur and Miles as well, I suppose. Like, it's all the Hollywood talk. Obviously, I love the Hollywood talk, So it's like, I love when he's talking about that he knows Archibald Leach, and, he's known to some as Cary Grant, but I like to call him Archibald Leach because it's his real name, and it's a ridiculous name, and it's such an attractive name for him being such a classically handsome man. But anyway, like they talk about all these things, and like, he even, Iris finds out that he, for instance, added the kid to Here's Looking at You Kid from Casablanca. And it's like, it's all this really cool stuff. And it, like, as I watch it every year that I've seen it, I've wanted to dive more into the movies that he's suggesting her to check out. And I just want to,
we talk about that actually, how every time we watch this movie, it makes us want to go back and watch all those old black and white old-timey movies.
And then we forget about it until the next time we watch this movie. And then we're like, we should really watch some of those. A little tidbit that Arthur asks Iris where she's from in England, and she says, oh, Surrey. And he says Cary Grant was from Surrey, and he told me Cary Grant wasn't from Surrey, but it worked for the...
That we know of, he wasn't from Surrey.
Maybe
Arthur knew.
Or Wikipedia article said he wasn't. So I'm taking that at face value.
Wow. Okay.
But yeah,
pretty heartbreaking.
In general, I really liked that Kate Winslet story, the way it kind of unfolds, and she gets to the house and she's all excited and she slowly meets all these people. And by the way, when she's running around the house freaking out, you notice the only room she does a double take in is the gym she's clearly going to ignore.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
She's just so happy. Like, despite being like a super depressed person, like she like is making the most of.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
The trip.
And the friendship with Arthur is really uplifting and charming. She's learning about all kinds of stuff. And then, obviously you see her develop a friendship with Jack Black, who gets his heart broken, and they develop a bond, which is like, one of the notes I made, I think I said the same exact thing when we were talking about High Fidelity before. But when Jack Black goes like full Jack Black, it's like the best. I love the Jack Black character.
And that's what I love.
It's that character, the same character every time, but I love it.
It's always, it's just Jack Black. I mean, it's the Jack Black character. But yeah, it's like I love the fucking scene in Blockbuster where he's imitating the
Yes.
film scores, and he goes to The Graduate, and you see Dustin Hoffman, who is the star of The Graduate, that just makes a little cameo appearance and says he can't go anywhere, basically, because, you know, Jack Black's fucking talking about his movie all the time. So it's, I mean, I fucking love that. I just,
Yeah.
I, I just,
And even to your earlier point about, you know, really enjoying the Hollywood talk, Jack Black's
Yeah.
character is kind of doing the same thing, just like
Yeah.
through scores and talking about, you know, how a score can transform a movie, or, you know, when he talks about Jaws and those two notes, like, creates an entire villain, you know?
Right.
And Dan's favorite scene is when
Yes.
Jack Black is writing the tune for Arthur to use to come out on stage when he's getting his award. And I'll let you talk.
When he when they're doing the doodly doos and whatever, and they both
Yeah.
say fruitily, and he said,
Yeah.
"We both said fruitily." Like, I can't tell if that was written or ad libbed,
Right.
but it's perfectly delivered.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the
either way,
chemistry
it
between
feels
them is
that
great.
natural.
Yeah, it feels natural.
Yeah, and that's what Dan said. He's like, "Wait, The Holiday, is that the Fruitily Do movie?" Like, that's And then I like too that like they form a friendship, Jack and Iris. Or does it no, his name is Miles and Iris, Jack Black and Kate Winslet. They form a friendship, and you can see how like they're like
Yeah.
starting to like each other, but it's not
Yeah.
this
Feels
like
genuine.
over the top
It really feels
sort of
genuine.
thing.
Even though he's like alarmingly charming at times, like
Well-
no human is quite that charming, I think.
It's,
But
and I mean, it's contrasted
it,
so
yeah.
heavily by the
Yeah.
Cameron
Yeah.
Diaz and Jude Law thing, you know, where it's like they're all over each other, all like out of nowhere, and it's like you just
Right,
all
so-
of a sudden dive back into this.
So that's, I think that's a good turning point to talk the Cameron Diaz story, where, you know, as I said earlier, it's kind of the exact opposite of Kate Winslet's, where she just kind of dives right in, falls in love, whatever. But like, as much as I like another contrast, as much as I like the Kate Winslet Jack Black story, I'm not a big fan of the Cameron Diaz story. Like,
No.
it's almost like the two halves of the movie were directed by different people, because like even the little things, like when she's on the airplane and there's this 2-foot tall stack of hardcover books next to her that she's ignoring. Like, I know it's a long flight, but it's not that long. And who brings that many books in their
Well,
carry-on
she had
to stack
said-
next to her?
Well, yes, but she had said, "I want to read a book. Like, I want to have a vacation. I haven't had
Right.
a vacation in years."
But even so, to bring literally like 15 giant hardcover books,
Right, like you couldn't find a fucking library in Surrey or something.
Well,
or
but
just
it's
bring
more like-
one or two,
And then
Right.
even put the rest. I think what
and
you're
put the
saying
rest
is
in
like,
your luggage.
yeah, put the rest in your
whatever.
check bag versus
oh, yeah.
taking them
I
on the
get what you're
plane.
saying.
By the way, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the short appearance by Catherine Hahn and Jim from The Office, who every
John
time I watch
Krasinski?
it,
Oh yeah,
I always forget that they're in the movie until I see them.
yeah.
I'm like, hey, it's Catherine
is
Hahn
like-
and Jim.
I mean, he was already on The Office by this point, but she was. I don't know what I would have seen her in other than this. You know, up to this point.
I think she might have been in a couple of really like small roles by this point, but,
Yeah.
like, in like bigger movies that you would have recognized.
To be
She was
fair,
in-
I hadn't seen. I didn't see this until probably 10 years after it came out. So by that time,
Yeah.
I definitely recognized her.
Well, she was definitely in Anchorman, so that was in like 2003. So
Oh,
that
there you go.
would be
Yeah.
good.
So kind of the synopsis for Cameron Diaz's side of the story is she goes to England. She's staying in Iris's house. The first night she's there, after you can tell she's like getting bored already because she's by herself. She doesn't know anybody, and she's not taking or making the effort to go meet anyone. Jude Law, who you find out is Iris's brother, knocks on the door late at night because he's been drinking in the pub in town, and his sister will put him up if he's had too much to drink.
And of course, I can't, gloss past how relatable that scene is, where, I know I'm sure you've been there, Brandon, where, you were down at Preston's or Brickhaven drinking, and you stumbled home to just crash on your sister's couch, but she wasn't home. Instead, it was Cameron Diaz, and
Right.
and she kindly asks you to make out with her, and then from there she's kind of sheepish but very kindly asks you if you'll be so generous as to bang her, and then says, oh, but I got to warn you, I'm not so good at it. So can you teach me how? He. I mean, it's just, it's so relatable. Who hasn't been there?
If I could tell you this, if I only had a nickel for every time that had happened to me, I'd have a shitload of nickels. I mean,
I don't think the fact that them having sex like the first time they meet each other is probably not as crazy, but it should have been. What they should have done is like they ran into each other at the pub in town, and like it more organically happened rather than her being at the house and him showing up at the door and politely asking to have sex. Like, it's just so bizarre.
It was so strange.
But okay, so then they're kind of forming a relationship, but you can definitely tell it's more of a romantic relationship sort of thing versus like the friendships that Iris is forming on the other side of the world. They keep talking about how like they can't do this because it's too complicated, but then they do it anyway. And then Cameron Diaz finds out that Jude Law is a widower and he has 2 little girls. Just so you know, don't think Cameron Diaz's character in this movie as a very kid-loving sort of thing. Like, I think she would be really awkward with children.
Is kind of conveyed on screen. Like, she's a little awkward, but not as awkward as she actually would be, I feel like.
Right. Like, they instantly love her and she seems to like do really well with them. And I think she would have, I think based on how they've characterized her in the movie that far, she would actually be kind of bitchy and pissed about it. Like, she wouldn't try to make an effort.
Right.
But neither here nor there.
Yeah, especially given that he hasn't told her about the kids and all that stuff. So it's she's going to be a little more testy about it, I guess.
I will say though not to be completely negative on the Cameron Diaz story, the 2 little girls that play Jude Law's kids are absolutely adorable and have some of the best lines of that.
They're very sweet.
Yes.
Like when they want her to see their tent fort in their bedroom and she's like, oh no, I gotta go. And she says, why? Do you not like tents?
Right. And she just gives her the saddest look, like, oh my God.
And then the one girl says, you can spend the night. We can push our beds together.
Right.
And then they say, we never have grown-ups here who are girls. I really like it. Which is actually not true because they have an aunt that lives like 3 miles away. And so they definitely have grown-ups who are girls. But so then like this whole thing is they get to know each other. They spend time together and they're all broken up about it and about Cameron Diaz having to go back home. And then her whole thing is too that she can't cry. Her parents divorced when she was 15 and she can't cry. And one thing I wanted to note is that I really have a hard time crying and I don't know why, except when Brandon made me watch About Time and I sobbed uncontrollably for hours.
It was so bad I had to call a couple of our local friends and ask that they go with us to a winery or something because Michelle was losing it.
And then just recently, this is really ridiculous. I don't know what was going on, but I sobbed uncontrollably a couple of weeks ago watching Clerks 3.
Wow.
Haven't shed a tear for deaths or like, major issues in my own life, but apparently Clerks 3 made me cry.
Yeah.
I feel like I attend the Jude Law of crying, the Jude Law school of crying. Like, he cries for everything. Like, I feel like I there are certain movies that I will watch that I just know will make me cry, and it's like I fucking fight back the tears aggressively.
Start
and I'm
breathing
like,
from deep in the diaphragm.
Right. And it's like, it's this very labored breathing, like really tight breaths. And it's like, oh God, it's fucking happening. God damn it. Anyway, so
there's some comedian, I don't remember who it was. He had a bit recently about, being a guy and watching a movie like that and it catches you and all of a sudden you go, huh. You just make that noise.
Right.
I was like, yeah, I've been there.
It really does happen.
Okay, so I can kind of relate to that, but as she's driving away, she realizes she is in love with Jude Law. She starts crying. She stops the car and runs back to...
For the second time, she's had to run across a cow pasture in stilettos that apparently she wears to the airport.
Because the first time, the driver didn't drop her off at the house, which I'd have been like, I'm paying you, asshole. You drop me off where I'm telling you to. The second time, why would she think it'd be faster to run in the snow in stilettos across a cow pasture back when the guy could have just turned around.
Can I ask a strange question? Because, I'm a guy and I don't understand. Why are we, as a people, wearing heels ever? Like,
I can't answer that. I was raised by a very butch lesbian, Brandon. So I don't wear heels. Okay. I don't know. I don't get it either.
It's very strange.
Then they get back together and she's like, oh, why did we ever think I was going to leave before New Year's Eve? That's so silly. And then you see Miles has come back with Iris, which is great. He said, oh, I don't have a date for New Year's. I can come back to
By the way, his reaction to her saying yes to a date is perfect. He silently and slowly fist pumps.
Yeah, right.
And then the last scene is all of them, all four of the main characters and the two little girls all dancing around each other. One thing I will say is there's no wrap up, right? Cameron Diaz comes back and says, oh, I'm staying till New Year's Eve. But you don't know what's going to happen because their whole thing is his life is in England, her life is in LA. They wouldn't be able to really make it work.
Could she not work remotely doing that?
She owns the fucking business. Right. She could do whatever she wants.
She could also sell that house and live in that little tiny fairy tale town forever.
Well, apparently the houses in that town are a couple $1 million. Because they are so crazy, cute, and whatever. Okay, so the other random thing I was going to mention is Graham, Jude Law's character, is talking about parenting and doing stuff, and he's like, I have a cow in the backyard. As we're watching this movie, Dan's like, should we have a cow in the backyard? I'm like, oh my God. No, we're not getting a cow.
No, that's not a good idea. I don't think so.
And the only other note that I'll make, speaking of the endings, are when Arthur enters the auditorium.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that scene was perfectly executed. That's actually the one moment in the whole movie that chokes me up, is when he opens the door and everybody's there for him, and he gets all choked up walking down the thing.
Yeah,
I think they nailed that scene.
Then he walks up the stairs on his own.
Yep. Except that Kate Winslet in that scene looks the worst that she looks in the entire movie. And she's supposed to have looked the best. I think her hair just looks really flat and
It does look kind of flat. I think she looks all right, though.
I mean, she looks okay, but in comparison to some of the other scenes where I think she looks much better. So overall, this is a kind of a feel-good sort of movie. It's not really holiday related. I mean, they don't even they're on a holiday, meaning they're on a vacation,
right.
And it takes place over Christmas and ends at New Year's, but they don't celebrate Christmas. They have the Hanukkah party with the other guys in the neighborhood that are friends with
There's Christmas decorations at the house, and Christmas lights and stuff on Jude Law's house.
Yeah, just in Jude Law's house, though, not in Cameron Diaz's, not in Kate Winslet's.
Right.
Yeah. But overall, I really liked the Kate Winslet story. The Cameron Diaz one, not so much, for many reasons.
I felt like maybe, to make the story work, it had to be like it was, I think, where they were trading houses and having their parallel stories and stuff. But I would have much rather somehow gotten a solo Kate Winslet movie with Jack Black and, maybe only be an hour and a half instead of 2 hours and 15 minutes long. That would be nice. It was
freaking long.
Yeah, it was way longer than I realized.
But we watched it on a weeknight and it was past our bedtime when it finished. And
I was like, how long is this movie?
Yeah. And the only thing we didn't talk about that it stood out as a moment that I really liked was when Arthur and Iris are sitting down and they're eating or whatever. And she's all hung up on Jasper, and he basically tells her that she's behaving like the best friend type, and she's actually a leading lady type, and that's just good pep talking, honestly. That's just really...
Well, and she tells him that I've been going to a therapist for 3 years, and she's never put anything as clearly as that. And then the reason that Arthur's making her watch all these old movies, and specific ones he's having her watch, have strong female leads and characters who have gumption. Right. And so when Jasper, we didn't talk about this, when Jasper comes back to try to woo her back, even though he's still engaged, and she finally grows a spine, Iris does, and tells him off. And she says at the end, well, yeah, that's because I have gumption.
Right.
It's a good moment.
Yeah, it's a
Her
solid moment.
reaction to his very like wishy-washy non-answer, I thought was great. She's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, what? You're still engaged? And he goes, I'm just so confused. And Michelle mentioned he sounds like a 14-year-old boy.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's just, I love the performances in this movie with, Cameron Diaz obviously wasn't amazing. And the stories, they have their merits and things like that, but
One thing I was
know.
going to ask is, do you think Dan and Brandon, since you're not as fond of the Cameron Diaz story, would it have been better if somebody else was doing the Cameron Diaz
I think
part?
so.
I think so, because I would have felt. I think a better actress could have convinced me or made me more empathetic. I don't know. There's something that doesn't convey with her.
I mean, it's like she's just not that likable of an actress, honestly. Like I don't know. I mean,
like I'm rooting for Kate Winslet the whole time. I'm not necessarily rooting for Cameron Diaz.
Right.
I'm rooting for Jude Law at one point more than Cameron Diaz.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
You want Jude Law to find happiness. You don't really care if Cameron Diaz is that happiness.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so we've got a little bit of trivia. Dustin Hoffman appears in the video rental store in an uncredited cameo as Jack Black talks about the score from The Graduate from 1967, in which Dustin Hoffman starred. According to Hoffman, this was unscripted and unexpected. He was going to Blockbuster for a movie, saw all the light, and came over to see what was going on. He knew director Nancy Myers, who scripted a short scene with him in it. And I find that fucking fascinating that like we almost didn't get that cameo in the movie. Lindsay Lohan, who had made her motion picture debut in Myers' remake of The Parent Trap from 1998, and James Franco, a friend of Myers, make uncredited appearances in the trailer of the fictional movie Deception, which Amanda and her team finished the trailer for at the beginning of the movie.
Also, gonna mention, if this is like supposed to be 3 weeks before Christmas, they would not be just finishing a trailer for release that quickly.
Right. It should be. I mean, that would literally be like starting to premiere in like late summer.
Yeah.
I mean, at the very least.
Anywho.
At least the teasers.
Yeah.
So, a few months after the movie came out, the popularity of house swapping was on the rise, so much so, in fact, that the police in England had to issue a warning against swapping homes with strangers due to identity fraud and murders. Who'd have thunk it?
But also, now, like, that's how we travel. Yeah. Most of the time is like Airbnb. Pre-Verbo. Yeah.
Right. Oh, let me ask you guys that question before the last trivia thing. So they both decide that like they're going to go and they're going to swap houses the very next day. How much do you think those international flights were going to run them?
I think the same thing every time. That in that moment, I'm like, if they, I guess at that time, call on the telephone, their travel agent or somebody.
It was 2003. You still could have internet.
Yeah, you could.
So if you go online and you're like, I need, like Cameron Diaz gets a first class ticket to London for the next day. That's got to be a $10,000 ticket or something.
Right. That is, that's completely insane.
Which she can probably afford, but Kate Winslet's character.
What I think they did do with Kate Winslet is they put her in a middle seat between two old ladies. Like they kind of showed that like she got the last seat on the plane.
Yeah.
And like that sort of thing. So honestly, it may have been, if it wasn't a full flight, it may not have been super expensive. And I also don't think at that time you had, because you didn't have all the internet back and forth, whatever, like prices probably didn't change as much as they do now 20 years later.
Yeah,
but it still would have been freaking expensive. But I think too, like the whole point is like Kate Winslet hasn't been on a vacation in 4 years. Like she's got to get away.
To be fair, she does live in a $2 million house.
Right. Right, exactly.
Writing blurs about weddings.
Okay, so when Miles, played by Jack Black, is humming movie scores to Iris, played by Kate Winslet, in Blockbuster Video, he does Hans Zimmer's score from Driving Miss Daisy from 1989. Hans Zimmer did the score for this movie, which is, I just think it's kind of a neat little nod to him. You know, I kind of like that. Mm-hmm. So info and ratings for this one: runtime 136 minutes, budget $85 million. Opening weekend, $12.8 million. Worldwide gross, $205.9 million. IMDb rating, 6.9. Rotten Tomato critics score, 50%. Rotten Tomato audience score, 80%. Personal rating, what do you guys think? Michelle?
So hang on, before you go to our ratings. So you're telling me the critic score for this was lower than Love Actually?
Oh,
on
yes,
Rotten
by
Tomatoes?
a significant amount, yeah.
Really?
That shocks me.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm blown away
Anyway,
myself.
back to Michelle's.
Yeah.
This one is probably 4.5, and the only reason that it's 4.5 for me is because of Cameron Diaz.
She brings it down.
She brings it down a little bit.
I'll give you 2 ratings. I think the Kate Winslet story is a 5. I think the Cameron Diaz story is a 2. But rather than splitting the difference, on the strength of the Kate Winslet story alone, I'll round it up to a 4.
Okay, that seems fair.
This is one that Dan will actually watch every year.
I love her and Jack Black's chemistry.
I did that thing where I caught myself grinning like an idiot multiple times at the romantic scenes of this movie. So my rating is 4.5 out of 5 stars, mostly because I actually didn't hate the Cameron Diaz storyline and performance as much as you guys. Like it's deeply flawed, but I didn't hate it quite on that level.
I don't hate the storyline. I just think her acting is terrible, which brings the movie down a little bit.
Yeah, I don't hate the storyline. I don't think she sells it, and just her acting in general. Her performance, I think, brings it down.
And I'm now really going to be racking my brain to figure out who could have done it better.
Yeah,
my answer's Jennifer Aniston.
I want to say like Naomi Watts. I don't know. I don't know about her. Never mind.
Retract.
Yes, I didn't say that. Okay, so anyway, that's the 2 movies that we have for today. I really appreciate you coming on, Michelle and Dan. I had a good time.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah, so obviously, like I always say, if you've got any suggestions, any requests, anything like that, just send them my way. Let me know what you want to see, and maybe I'll entertain the idea of actually doing them. So, all right, everybody. I guess that's it for today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye now.
Bye.
Brandon at Random Reviews is performed, written, directed, produced, and edited by Brandon Griffiths. Theme music is performed by Augusto Diniz from Fiverr.